I'll tell you something, man. One time, Sam and I went on vacation. Jackson is Sam. We were in Portofino. We had already completed one dinner. To board this boat, we walked back. I've heard that you guys go on yacht trips together, Harvey. Well, Magic and Cookie join us on the boat. Steve and Margie own a boat of their own. When I used to host a golf tournament in Bermuda, I got to know Bernie years ago. My comic night's high point was, well, Bernie told me, and that's all I have to say. Additionally, he was angry with Steve because, according to him, Steve attempted to have him removed from the Ocean's movie. He completed Ocean's 11. Yes, and attempted to get his part after being recruited. Samuel L. Jackson, 76, is said to have spoken out against Steve Harvey's contentious ascent to stardom. When they went on vacation together and hung out on yachts, people used to think they were cool. However, Samuel eventually revealed the truth. I've heard that Steve and Harvey go on yacht trips or something. A boat trip with Magic and Cookie, that is. Marie and Steve possess a boat of their own. It wasn't planned to run on the ocean. Samuel was clearly unhappy about it based on his response. But Samuel L. Jackson was turned off by more than just that. It's affection. It's that infatuated love. For your kind of love, I'm ready to be corny. These are the purportedly shocking disclosures of Steve Harvey's alleged flaws, which the entertainment business has reportedly been working for years to hide. Let's get started. You must comprehend how differently Steve Harvey and Samuel L. Jackson developed their careers in order to comprehend why Jackson would distance himself from Harvey. Real struggle and indisputable talent were the foundations of Jackson's ascent to prominence. Samuel L. Jackson's path to fame wasn't simple, but it was genuine, whereas Harvey's story is rapidly being shown as a fabrication intended to fabricate a story of adversity. Jackson was born in Washington, D.C., and after his father departed, he was raised by his mother and grandmother. He suffered from a terrible stutter that almost prevented him from pursuing his acting career. When I was younger, I stutter. As a result, children made fun of me, laughed at me, and mocked me in various ways. He overcame his speech handicap, graduated from Morehouse College, and performed theater in New York for years while working odd jobs to make ends meet. Decades of working hard in little parts, establishing connections, and showcasing his talent one performance at a time led to Jackson's breakthrough. He became known as a serious actor thanks to his work with Spike Lee on movies like Jungle Fever and Do the Right Thing. He was already in his 40s when Pulp Fiction made him a household star. He was a man who had earned every chance through skill and perseverance. Are you aware of who we are? We work with Marcellus Wallace, your business partner. Conversely, comedians who knew Steve Harvey in his early years are increasingly challenging his story. Harvey's well-known story of being homeless and sleeping in his van for 3 years while pursuing comedy has been accused by Cat Williams and others of being entirely made up for pity and commercial appeal. Industry insiders say Harvey was never as poor as he said he was. Contrary to his later claims of living in his car and washing in gas station restrooms, fellow comedians recall him having resources, family support, and somewhere to stay. He became more approachable and inspirational to audiences who felt they were helping someone who had actually suffered because of the homeless narrative, which became a crucial component of his brand. In particular, Williams has criticized Harvey's allegations of sleeping in his car, pointing out that other comics of the time recall Harvey having alternatives and support networks. Steve Harvey admitting to being homeless in the past. That's my tale. His tale isn't that. Steve Harvey never experienced homelessness. 25 years ago, while he was touring with Mark Curry, he was earning $3,000 per concert. Industry insiders say Harvey was never as poor as he said he was. Contrary to his later claims of living in his car and washing in gas station restrooms, several comedians recall him having support networks and places to stay. His brand became heavily reliant on the homeless narrative, which helped audiences relate to and find inspiration in him. There is a significant difference. Jackson's career was based on true hardship, poverty, hardships, and years of uncertainty. In order to make his comparatively easy journey seem more dramatic and inspirational, Harvey is accused of fabricating a struggle story. Jackson's uneasiness with being linked to Harvey can be explained by this basic character difference. Jackson embodies the values of classic Hollywood, where talent and perseverance are the keys to success. Harvey embodies the new paradigm of carefully crafted personalities and storylines intended to sway public opinion. What Jackson and other industry insiders had assumed was validated when Cat Williams revealed Harvey's habit of stealing jokes and making up stories. Harvey wasn't merely prosperous. He used deceit, theft, and manipulation to achieve his achievements. Being associated with Harvey's fabricated image was intolerable for someone like Jackson, who had based his career on truthfulness. The yacht photographs that implied camaraderie between them now made sense as something Jackson would want to address publicly. Everyone initially believed it to be friendship aims. Later on, however, Samuel L. Jackson clarified that this wasn't that. Whether it's the real-life guy or the professional image, it appears like Samuel Jackson isn't fully falling for the Steve Harvey charm. Although Jackson's affections have been hinted at over the years, they just reached a whole new level when he revealed the details of his experience with Harvey while traveling to the ocean. A few years back, pictures of Jackson and his spouse lounging at a holiday spot with Harvey and his spouse appeared online. Because so little was known about their connection at the time, everyone thought they were close friends. Even headlines said, "Life on the Ocean Rave, friends Samuel L. and Steve Harvey." With their wives, Jackson and Magic Johnson celebrated July 4th aboard a lavish yacht. Their friendship was shown in a very glitzy light, wasn't it? Recent events led Samuel to conclude that it was time to make things clear. As it happens, the encounters in the ocean were completely unplanned. Jackson claims that he and his spouse just happened to run with Harvey and his wife while traveling to their annual holiday destination. And let me tell you, based on Jackson's face when he made this revelation, he wanted everyone to understand that their encounter with Steve wasn't a staged Hollywood altercation. It was a completely unanticipated mishap. "I've heard that you guys go on yacht or whatever for your vacation, Steve Harvey. Well, Magic and Cookie join us on the boat. Marjorie and Steve own a boat of their own. It's not just uncomfortable vacations though. Everything changed because of what Steve allowed to occur within his own home." A louder, more direct voice began to shake the table. Williams, Cat, Steve, and Cedric were both called out by Cat during his meeting with Shannon Sharpe. He even revealed a shocking detail regarding a confrontation he had with Steve Harvey years prior. Spoiler alert, Cat prevailed. This alleged comedy contest took place at the Championship of Comedy in 2008. Cat decided he had had enough of Steve's pranks and turned the event into a face-off, even though it wasn't advertised as such. On stage, he made comments about Steve's baldness and his use of a man's wig, completely making fun of him. To be honest, most people were unaware that Steve was surreptitiously wearing a high-top fade on national television at the time. His hair was the talk of town. His well-aligned hairline made men all around the world envious, and their own hairlines were receding more quickly than they could schedule a barber's appointment. Steve's defining style, the pinnacle of his TV character, was his high-top fade. When he entered a room with that fading blazing in all its splendor, heads turned. It therefore struck deep when Cat Williams came for his hair. It wasn't your typical roast. Steve's pride, confidence, and self-worth were what Cat was after. And whether Steve acknowledged it or not, Cat's remarks made an impression. The evidence. After that night, Steve finally decided to go bald instead of wearing a wig. Yes, Steve had to take responsibility for the Cat's exposure of him. Today, Steve Harvey's bald head is a staple of his recognizable appearance. That sharp mustache goes well with it. However, he was concealed beneath that wig at the time. And according to Cat, Steve decided to give up stand-up for good after being humiliated by the roast. Hollywood produces 30,000 new scripts annually. Not one of them requested a black country bumpkin who looks like Mr. Potato Head and is incapable of having a meaningful conversation with Cobby. There aren't any. If that's the case, it makes sense why Steve would get spooked every time Cat's name was brought up. You don't run into the person who allegedly put an end to your stand-up career very often. You should reconsider if you believe Steve was past it. Steve seemed clearly apprehensive when Dave Chappelle made a joke about Cat Williams during the Def Comedy Jam 25, 9 years later in 2017, but it's hard to blame him. You won't be cool about it really if the person who threw you into early retirement turns up. Cedric the Entertainer's conflict with Kat, on the other hand, is less dramatic but nonetheless quite interesting. It seems that before Kat told Club Shay Shay about the two, most people were unaware that they even had problems. Despite Cedric's warnings not to, Kat said that Cedric had simply stolen one of his best jokes. Kat claims that this specific joke was his trademark closer, the type of content that left audiences in stitches. In 1998, BT utilized it in their Comic View advertising since it was so fantastic. This is the messy part. Cedric, according to Kat, came to see him perform the joke at the Comedy Store, enjoyed it, and even gave him a congrats afterwards. However, a few years later, Cedric reversed course and used the same joke, virtually word for word, in his Kings of Comedy show. He merely replaced Kat's vehicle with a spacecraft. Kat wasn't going to overlook that, which only made matters worse. He also roasted Cedric, calling him a lifeless walrus who was incapable of dancing, singing, or coming up with a joke. Kat went one step further and made fun of Cedric's comedic specials, saying that they aren't even accessible on Netflix or Tubi. He appeared in 4 comedies. Shannon, they're terrible. Neither Netflix nor Tubi have them. You may believe that Kat is exerting too much effort, but if you think about the charges he has leveled at Steve and Cedric, perhaps he is right. Kat has made some grave accusations against these men, even going so far as to say that they plotted against the late Bernie Mac alongside Ricky Smiley. Kat claims that although Steve and Cedric feigned a close friendship with Bernie, they were actually jealous of him and attempted to ruin his career. Because Hollywood studios weren't exactly coming up to put Steve in films, Kat noted that Steve was jealous of Bernie's acting abilities. Kat continued by accusing Steve and the other members of the Kings of Comedy ensemble of purposefully scheduling Bernie Mac as the opening act for their performances because they believed Steve would be the main attraction. But you know what? Because Bernie was the funniest person up there, the producers reversed the script and put him on the set last when editing the film. I got them smart from a few kids. Sassy talkers shake their heads. Talk to the hand. Talk to the hand. Although it may seem like a crazy conspiracy theory, DJ Ed Lover later supported Kat's assertions. Bernie Mac's close friend Ed claimed that Bernie had alerted him about Steve's dubious actions. Ed Lover claims that Bernie told him that Steve Harvey had attempted to cast him in Ocean's 11. Bernie didn't hold back. He thought Steve was deliberately trying to undermine him. When you begin to pull all of this together, you can understand why Samuel L. According to Jackson, Steve Harvey becomes quite anxious around Kat Williams. It appears that Steve, Cedric, and their group have a history of stomping on other comedians in order to maintain their own prominence. They are accused of stealing jokes, betraying other comics, and doing whatever it takes to maintain their popularity. The majority of comedians likely keep quiet about all of this since they would rather concentrate on their own careers. For instance, Bernie Mac knew what was happening but decided not to cause too much trouble. However, Kat Williams has never been one to remain silent when he witnesses dubious activity. As he sees it, he calls it. And that's probably why he scares Steve, Cedric, and other people. Janice McCullough, the daughter of Bernie Mac, has also recently supported Kat Williams' assertions. Mala concentrated on Williams's statement of admiration for her father while criticizing comedians, specifically Steve Harvey, who supposedly attempted to make fun of Mac prior to his death in 2008 at the age of 50. There are some individuals who have given my dad his flowers now that he's deceased, that I'm looking at like, come on, well, he wasn't doing it while he was, she added, but I felt like it was real. Makala expressed her sincere gratitude and admiration for the Pimp Chronicles comedian's comments. Williams' admiration for her father, she clarified, was evidence that the late comic was a man of honor. My dad was a stand-up man, which makes me happy. To others, he was the man I knew him to be, because we can love someone, believe they are one way, and then discover otherwise. Mala went on, I just really appreciate what I believe is genuine love and respect that Kat Williams showed my father. She also mentioned that she would be willing to meet with Williams In any case, there are other people who are criticizing Steve Harvey for stealing jokes than Cat Williams. Additionally, veteran comedian Mark Curry came forward to say that Steve had stolen one of his lines. Mark claims that while he was relaxing at home, a friend called and instructed him to switch on the television. When he did, Steve Harvey was on stage, telling one of Mark's trademark 1999 jokes. And one Halloween he completed all of my Halloween-related tasks. I'm observing that. I got a call. During his own Comedy Central-produced stand-up show, Mark had said the joke. When questioned about it, Steve denied everything and told Mark Curry that if he wanted to charge him of joke theft, he needed to bring receipts. Fans of the seasoned comedian did, however, discover the joke Mark Curry was referring to, demonstrating that Steve actually performed Jack Curry's joke. In the performance, which was a Halloween joke, Mark said that they had to utilize some odd yet amusing costumes on All Hallows Eve because they didn't have much money while they were growing up. Halloween was a Halloween excursion. We were unable to purchase any Halloween outfits. Please kids, Mama put boxes on us and sent us to the booze store. We had no idea who we were. I have no idea what we are. On his well-known talk show, Little Big Shots, Steve reportedly made the same joke about growing up in a low-income household and having to dress up in amusing Halloween costumes. Curry claimed in an interview with Willie D on his podcast Willie Dive that Steve stole his jokes because he wanted to be like Mark Curry, not because he wanted money. Initially, he talked about how many comedians are stealing jokes from his profession without calling the Think Like a Man author by name. "You're on my material, correct? What's that about, you know?" Before you know it, people want to leap up. Oh, he was unaware. He did, in fact, steal your yes. Curry said that while the substance is similar to what occurs in the rap industry, there are a lot of elements that set one performer apart from another. But stand-up comedians are different, and when someone steals their work, they are forced to either defend their originality or console the person who took it. So he sent Steve Harvey a warning. He went on to tell Willie D that he enjoys crafting his own jokes and makes an effort to write about subjects that are distinct from those covered by other comedians. Because his gags are distinct and unlike any other, this aids him in identifying when comedians are stealing his routine. Thus, he was able to identify the portions of his jokes that Steve Harvey had appropriated. Steve Harvey, however, retaliated against Mark Curry, asking the seasoned comedian to mature and quit making things up. According to him, he hasn't done stand-up in a long time, so he has no idea what the old G was about. Harvey stated at the time that Mark Curry needed to mature. Since 2015, Steve Harvey has not performed live. He has no idea what he is about. I am at peace since he's making things up. Many admirers, however, believed that Mark Curry was correct when he claimed that Steve Harvey aspired to be like him. They drew attention to the fact that the TV host reportedly stole Curry's TV show Hanging with Mr. Cooper, in addition to stealing his quips. When Cat Williams said the same thing in his interview with Shannon Sharpe, he too co-signed the fan feelings. The same Steve Harvey that went to watch Mark Curry do his entire sitcom and then stole everything Mark Curry had. Cat Williams stated of Steve Harvey, "Samuel L. Jackson's desire to correct the record now makes sense. He had no desire to be connected to Steve Harvey, because there is a pattern to everything. Lori and Diddy, The Quiet, the jokes that were taken, the conflict with Bernie Mac, rather than simply one thing." And you will begin to understand why more and more people are turning away from Steve Harvey after listening to what Mark Curry, Bernie's daughter, and Cat Williams have to say. Anyway, people, there concludes the video. Goodbye.